it all starts with actually getting crystal clear on your vision. If we have businesses, the first thing we do is we create visions and mission statements and values that really support that. What does the business actually look like? But from a personal standpoint, we're just so busy, we don't really have time to do that. But when you can actually create clarity with where it is that you're going in life, it's amazing that you can bust down walls, you can break through limiting beliefs. You can change your story that you tell yourself, and really truly achieve the goals and the life that you want to live. So this 5-phase strategy is all underpinned by having, a great vision statement for yourself. Because if you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dave Wolcott, a wealth strategist, author, and host of the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast. With over 20 years in alternative investments, Dave developed the Holistic Wealth Strategy, a 5-phase framework to help entrepreneurs achieve exponential wealth and freedom. As the founder of Pantheon Investments, he empowers clients to break free from traditional financial models and build legacy wealth. Please welcome to the show, Dave Wolcott. Dave, welcome to the show. Man, it is a beautiful day here at the end of the year when we're recording this episode, but tell us, how's it feel to be Dave today?
Hey, Brett, super grateful to be here and connect with you and your audience today.
Awesome. So how does it feel to be Dave today?
Well, it's interesting, Brett. Today is the day before, as we're recording this, the day before Thanksgiving. And so I'm actually out of my full studio and visiting my daughter, who recently had a baby. So I just became a grandfather here, which is just an amazing way to, celebrate life, and actually see, your baby have a baby. And frankly, it's one of the reasons that I'm just so passionate about wealth, Brett, because it's really, what wealth really means to people and creating a legacy and creating values for others.
So truly grateful. That's what it feels like to be Dave today. So awesome. Baby having a baby. So congratulations, Grandpa Dave.
You bet. It's a new title for me. Still trying to wear that one.
Yeah, just take it with this gratitude. It's so amazing. And when you're telling me that, it reminded me of an old story. When you tell people about collect calls, and the kids nowadays have no idea what that means. But in the collect call commercials, there was the funny commercial where the couple had a baby, and then they wanted to tell their parents. Obviously, they didn't have any money, so they used the collect call process. When the operator picks up, would you like to take a collect call from? And they said, "We had a baby, it's a boy." Do you remember that commercial? We had a baby, it's a boy?
Yeah, I do. And, Brett, this is going to be a beautiful segue actually into a little bit of my origin story, and why I really got into alternative wealth and really started, thinking about holistic wealth in a whole different way.
Mm-hmm. So, well, let's get right into it. I mean, you've created an incredible framework for creating wealth and freedom. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your journey and how you developed the holistic wealth strategy then?
Yeah, 100%. So I followed that recipe that was out there, which was go to school, get good grades, you'll then get a job and life would just work out. I was raised in a middle class family, and so I followed down that path. Went to school at George Washington in DC, and then had the opportunity to do the ROTC program, and actually went into the Marine Corps and learned some amazing things in the Marines that they don't, teach you anywhere else. Things such as leadership, teamwork, and integrity. Shortly after I transitioned from the Marines, I got into the tech industry. And at the time, my wife and I had an 18-month-old. And on October 24th, 2000, we literally had triplets and quadrupled the size of our family, Brett. Yeah. So this is, something you read about in the newspaper. And, the first thing as a father that was really going through my mind was, it's $1 million to raise a kid. Now I've just really exponentially increased the goalpost, right? And where I had to be. And so I sat down with my financial planner the next day, and he told me the same thing every other planner said, which was, max out your 401k. There's 529 plans for the kids. Try to defer your taxes as much as possible, right? And it was at that point, Brett, that I just got so frustrated with typical financial planning advice. And this set me on this obsessive journey to figure out how the top 1% were truly building their wealth. So I started investing in alternative assets, everything from real estate to raw land to single family, multifamily, oil and gas, office, retail, you name it, right? All kinds of different asset classes. And then fast forward 20 years later, and I really created Pantheon to help other people, learn how to think differently about their wealth so they can really exponentially increase their wealth, and just avoid Wall Street, invest in Main Street, and really create that freedom in their lives that everyone is looking for.
And I'm sure a lot of the listeners have that similar path or that idea, that moment where you look up, you raise your head up, and it's like, wait a second, this feels a little different than what I'm hearing, what I've been taught, what I've been conditioned to do. And that's when we, have this understanding that there are different opportunities out there. And wow, it sounds amazing to dip into this. And wow, triplets! Oh my goodness, I cannot imagine. And what a better way to kick Dave into gear to find that new path to be able to provide for the family. So you have four children.
I do.
So the triplets that's it. We don't want any more babies.
No, we're done. Well, they're 23. We're 23 now. So,
yeah,
they're, we got through that, but, the education and the learning, never stops, and supporting and always trying to be a better father. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And children have that amazing way to keep teaching us so much about what we don't know. It's so amazing, and it's joyful, and it's challenging as well too. But that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother podcast. On that side, but congratulations to you and your family on that journey as well too. So now I want to talk about the book just a little bit here, the holistic wealth strategy. Your book outlines 5-phase approach to building exponential wealth. Can you walk us through those phases and explain how they fit together, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. Right. So it all starts with actually getting crystal clear on your vision. If we have businesses, the first thing we do is we create visions and mission statements and values that really support that. What does the business actually look like? But from a personal standpoint, we're just so busy, we don't really have time to do that. But when you can actually create clarity with where it is that you're going in life, it's amazing that you can bust down walls, you can break through limiting beliefs. You can change your story that you tell yourself, and really truly achieve the goals and the life that you want to live. So this 5-phase strategy is all underpinned by having, a great vision statement for yourself. Because if you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time. And then from there, we move into phase 1. And phase 1, it's really all about you, Brett. Right? It's about mindset. We're coming upon, Thanksgiving, and we all go home and see old family and friends. And oftentimes we'll talk about, talking about a new investment like, hey, I'm going to invest in oil and gas because I can get an active income tax offset. And people at the table tell you, hey, that sounds risky. My financial planner says it's a bad idea. Well, you have to have the right mindset to be always asking questions about yourself, right? And always asking questions about, conventional thinking and conventional practices. So having this growth mindset, always asking why, is really crucial to exploring alternative ways to really grow your wealth. Because if you're one of those who has a fixed mindset and you just say, well, that's not for me, right? It's just because you don't really understand it. So you have to have an open mindset. And what that does is it starts to change your belief system, starts to change your habits, right? And then you can create new goals to support that vision you created.
Interesting. So we talked about having a target, and that's so important. If I don't have something to aim at, how do I even know or understand where I need to go? Starting with the mindset in the first piece, I think that's so important as well too. I talk with a lot of people, and that's where we've got to focus that first piece, focus on you, and having that growth mindset. Understanding what's behind that is really important as well too. If that's the first phase, what are the other 4 phases?
Yeah, so the second phase is really trying to increase your IQ. So, I know you have a lot of docs listening, right? And, the first thing you do is, right, you get an education. But when is the last time that we got educated properly in this space of, financial management, improving your financial IQ? Right. So this is where you need to start learning these things. And there's no courses, unfortunately. This is something that should be taught. I think this is really partly the root cause of a lot of lack of education, right, in America today. But we need to have education and learn about alternative ways to invest. We need to stop relying on Wall Street and thinking that's the only answer, that we invest in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So improving your financial IQ, improving your mindset IQ, your emotional IQ is also really important too. And really, I like to talk, because this is holistic wealth. It's all about a health IQ. When you look at Steve Jobs, for instance, right? He had all the money in the world, but he couldn't buy himself another day. Mm-hmm. Right. So all of these things really come together in kind of how I define wealth, which is not only financial capital, but you have these other components, which are spiritual capital, emotional capital, physical capital, intellectual capital.
This probably tie into the freedom piece too. If you have freedom of those items as well too, could help.
I think freedom, yeah, that's a great question, Brett. And I love this topic, right? Because it's really the psychology of money. And we often just don't think enough about it, right? We're constantly in this reactive state, raising families, building our careers, working insane hours. But if you really think about money, what it's really doing is you're trying to drive to some type of freedom, right? So not only freedom of money to do what you want to do, but also freedom of purpose, like waking up every day and being fascinated and motivated by the work you do. We have so many docs as clients that have literally been able to create passive income streams that now they still love medicine, but now they can practice on their own terms. And that's just so much more meaningful to them. Also, we have freedom of time, right? If you're working 70 hours a week, right, you're going to miss some crucial parts of your family or your kids growing up and things like that. So owning some control over your time is really important. And then freedom of relationship. I don't know about you, but I love to spend time with like-minded people who are ambitious, people are growth-minded, innovating, bringing new ideas, sharing, giving to others. But sometimes if you don't have that, right, you've got people that can be energy vampires in your life.
We've got mindset, IQ. What would be the third phase then, Dave?
So in the third phase, this is where we start talking about actually creating an infrastructure in your wealth, right? And so many people, especially many physicians out there, right? If you're a high income earner, we're always thinking about the return on investment on a particular asset. But your number one biggest expense is actually taxes. Right? So if you can create a proper tax strategy that can lower your taxes by 10 to 20% a year, that's absolutely massive, right? So creating a proactive, tax strategy, not working with a tax preparer who just files your taxes, but creating proper tax strategy. We also are licensed and help clients set up what's called infinite banking. I'm sure you've probably had some guests on the show before as well. But this is a fantastic place for high income, high net worth folks to basically deploy capital into this cash value life insurance policy that's doing multiple things for you. Not only does it provide cash value in terms of a death benefit, right? But you can also borrow against this capital to create a new business or to invest in other opportunities and start creating velocity around your wealth. We also talk about other things such as estate planning and asset protection. Right? You've worked so hard to build your wealth. You don't want to lose it as well. So this is phase 3 is all about creating really infrastructure and a team around your wealth.
Absolutely. And I want to circle back to that infinite banking idea and touch on it again. But from infrastructure, where does that take us into phase 4 then?
Okay. Phase 4 is where it starts to get fun, Brett, right? So oftentimes we talk to clients and they say like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I really want to start to take some action. So what do I do? Well, a lot of people have their money tied up in 2 places. It's either in government sponsored qualified plans or it's in trapped equity in their primary residence. And the last time I checked, the rate of return on equity in your primary residence is 0, right? So if you want to follow the Dave Ramsey approach and pay off all your debt, that's a whole different plan, right? Mm-hmm. But if you want to start really maximizing your assets, right? Take out a home equity line of credit, right? Borrow some of that money, put that into a low risk investment that you can arbitrage, increase your, tax deduction on the mortgage interest in your primary residence and start to really optimize your assets. That's just one example. We can also do things if you have government sponsored qualified plans. You can move into, say, a self-directed IRA and then start to invest in some alternative assets. So it's really starting to create this portfolio that's much more risk adjusted and has much more diversification from the stock market and balance.
And if I summarize that to optimize assets, would that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. So optimizing assets, recapturing equity, you leveraging it so you can use it and increase the velocity that way. That's awesome. And it gives me goosebumps because I have real world results from that step number 4, real world results. And those things stacked together really give you the just the power and belief in yourself that this stuff makes sense. So optimizing assets in phase 4, what does that leave us for in phase 5, Dave?
So phase 5 is the fun one. That's where you build massive passive income. And so starting to invest in alternative assets that basically give you a 3-dimensional return profile, Brett. So what we look for is assets that are non-correlated to the stock market. They have strong macroeconomic fundamentals, right? And then they also provide tax efficiency, passive income, and forced appreciation. So that way we're really winning, or you could look at it the other way and say we're reducing our downside, right? Because we have tax efficiency, we've got income, and we're not building some massive nest egg until 65 when we retire to then start to, kill our golden goose, right? Every year.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So if I were to run through these 5 phases, I would say mindset, number 1. Number 2 is education. Number 3 would be infrastructure. 4 is optimizing assets. And then 5 is building massive passive income.
Beautiful.
That's beautiful. And breaking that down. And, we have a question of if the listeners out there are just getting started in building their wealth journey, at what phase should they start? Can they jump some if they feel like they have one or the other? Or where do you suggest they start?
Well, what's interesting after working with hundreds of investors, Brett, it's really cool that this framework is very flexible. And I find that it's timeless because I'm still going through it, right? At every different stage of my portfolio, I'm always optimizing my assets. I'm always looking for new opportunities in deal flow. I may have a taxable event like, right, this year trying to offset some, active income. So we have an oil and gas opportunity, right? That's, significant to do that. I'm constantly learning because your net worth is directly proportional to your financial IQ. Mm-hmm. So always learning, and I'm always expanding my mindset. And just think about guys like Elon Musk. I mean, what is the difference between Elon and someone you went to high school with who has the same set of friends, right? Lives in the same town and has the same job? It's all mindset.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we can hit these different entry points along the way, and we'll never stop each one of them. The summation of them together is, I guess, the turning point. Then, just like being a father, like we were talking about earlier, Dave, we're never going to stop learning being a father, and it's never too late to get better either. It's always constantly getting better. Back to this infinite banking idea. I like this, and I just want to briefly touch on it for the listeners who may not. I'm sure they may have heard this before, infinite banking, but what does that mean? You talk about it as a tax efficient and liquidity foundation. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so let me demystify this, because some people have probably heard about it and there's a lot of confusion, and it's really simple. It's just a cash value whole life insurance policy. So if you have term life insurance, you're basically renting your insurance. Whole life insurance is that you're actually purchasing it, on yourself. And this is a strategy that the ultra wealthy have been using for a long time. And they usually use it as actually a cornerstone to building out that portfolio, right? And we like to think about portfolio construction as like your wealth pyramid. And so at the base of the pyramid, you want something that's really sound. They've been paying dividends since the Civil War. So it's actually safer than banks, right? You put your capital, and this is a really important note, Brett, on this. Again, one of the things that I've learned from, centimillionaires, we've interviewed, many centimillionaires, in those communities. And one thing they do really well is they look for multipliers. So rather than just growing your wealth in a linear fashion by saying, hey, I'm going to increase from a 9% to 11%. In this infinite banking strategy, you can get a yield on the cash flow, which compounds tax-free, okay, and into the future. So that's one thing. It has asset protection around it because you're actually in life insurance, so you're protected against creditors. You can borrow against the capital to invest in anything else you want, right? Which provides you this liquidity, and you can kind of become your own bank. You can also add velocity to your portfolio. So I take the passive income I have from my different deals, and then I flush it back into the policy until I'm ready for the next tranche or the next investment that comes along. And what that's doing is it's constantly keeping money working for me at the same time. So by having all of these benefits together, in addition to the fact that, I've now protected my family and actually done some legacy estate planning as well, because you can avoid taxes and probate to your heirs, with the cash value of the policy. So by having all of these multiple things, it's a very, prudent piece to have inside of your portfolio.
And that compounding tax-free, the actual return is to an heir. So that tax-free piece is to the heir of that policy. Is that correct?
Well, you can use it. So you can use this as basically your retirement vehicle. Okay. So the cash value, the total, it grows it's about a 6% rate. But when you talk about tax-free compounding, that's almost like 9%. Right. Mm-hmm. So that total value is compounding every year, and you can continue to draw off of that until you're 120. Mm-hmm. Right.
Draw as in taking a cash disbursement.
Yeah. So this is what's unique about it, right? So rather than creating a taxable event, you actually borrow against the policy, and then therefore there's no taxes on it.
Yep. Okay. I understand. What are some common risks or some unknown risks that are out there with the infinite banking concept?
Well, the risk is to not have it properly structured. It's very important that you work with a mutual insurance company. And if you called any insurance company today and talked to them about this strategy, they really wouldn't know what you're talking about. So you have to really work with the right professionals who understand how to set this up to use it in the way we just described here. So that's really important.
So using the right insurance provider, understanding the whole life versus term versus, I think there's even interval methods. Like there's different methods that won't actually work for the whole permanent policy. That's one way to avoid this. Are there other ways beyond using the life insurance to hit the infinite banking? And I've heard this before. Maybe I'm twisting the ideas around leveraging different types of debt that the way that interest is compounded, the difference in the two interests, using one type of debt to pay down another debt. Does that fall into the infinite banking as well too?
Yeah, there's some different variations. And sometimes when they start to get, too complex, you might need to back off, right? Because they become a little bit more exotic. But typically, if you have a net worth of, 15 to 20 million, there's something called premium life, which is much more advanced. And it's a very interesting way of where the bank can actually fund the policy, because you are actually collateral because your net worth is so high. It's kind of a whole different path, but something that, if you're a high net worth investor, could be something worth exploring.
So keeping it simple, very important. I believe in that. Using the whole life insurance policy as your own bank to borrow against it, not to trigger the taxable disbursement, but to borrow against it. It keeps growing, and then the actual payout is where the tax benefit is for the heir. They're not taxed on that growth. Is that correct? Yeah,
but in addition, if you fund this, say you put in $500K this year, you're getting tax-free compounding on that $500K. So that keeps growing. So that's where you're getting the tax benefit.
And you can borrow against that growth.
Correct.
Okay.
You can borrow against the growth, but the total cash value of the growth continues to expand every year.
Yep.
It's untouched. And then we can use kind of, some people talk about this as actually using the same dollar twice, which is kind of the beauty of it.
And then we can use these inside of that say phase 3, where we're talking about infrastructure, setting this stuff up, and then even into phase 4, then optimizing assets, right? We can capture that equity that's basically in that policy and then go deploy it somewhere else. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right. And what you're onto there, which is another, really cool thing we like to do, is we call it wealth strategy stacking. So, okay, you optimize your assets by, let's say you're pulling some capital outside of your primary residence that's being dormant. You create an infinite banking policy with that, and then you fund an oil and gas opportunity, right? That has, we have one right now that is up to 92% tax offset of your active income. So, for physicians, right, that's a huge way to reduce. You could probably drop down a couple of tax brackets, right, by doing that. And then you get the capital back, you put it right back into the policy, and then leverage it out and go do it again.
So you're a big advocate for investing in alternative assets, just like you were saying, the oil and gas. Obviously, there's risks in this. In this particular scenario, the risk of, hey, not getting your money back, and then you would be on the line for either paying down that loan on your life insurance or just continuing to pay the interest on that life insurance, right? So there's some risk involved. How do you assess these, and what are the key benefits of those risks in the oil and gas world?
Sure, Brett. So we run a virtual family office and a private equity group. We have a full-time portfolio manager that does extensive due diligence on different opportunities, where we're vetting sponsors with everything from legal background checks to credit checks. and spending time with them, getting to know them, sometimes for years before we even, place investor capital in there. The one specifically that we're talking about for year end with the oil and gas, the sponsor has deployed over $3 billion in investor capital. So it's an institutional quality opportunity. And, what's unique about our model is that their minimum investment is $10 million to get access to this opportunity. Wow. So it's mostly institutional players. But what we do is we create a sub fund, and then you can invest for as little as $50,000. And then you get the same benefits as that $10 million investor. And we pool that capital together to be one investor to them.
Fund to fund, right? Setting that up to
exactly.
grab economies of scale. And again, setting up this infrastructure and surrounding yourself with the right people, that you then have the ability to assess the risk and look at the benefits around those. You mentioned a second ago about self-directed IRA, and I didn't want to jump over that too fast. I want to come back and talk just a little bit about that, and maybe we can wrap it into this. Many of the listeners might hesitate to move away from their traditional retirement accounts. What are the potential advantages of exiting those 401ks, and how does this align with your holistic strategy?
Well, look, if anyone is interested, we actually have a 401k exit calculator, and I went through this process myself, Brett. I was having great success in investing in alternatives, and then you get to a point you run out of capital. So then I did the taboo thing, and I said, hey, what if I actually exit out of this 401k money? I pay the penalty and I pay the taxes. Well, let me give you a simple scenario for the listeners to really have things kind of hit home here. So if you take $100,000 that's inside your 401k, let's say you actually sold it. So forget about even the self-directed IRA. Let's say you sold it, you paid 10% penalty, you paid 35% taxes. So you have a net investable 55K. And I invested that into an alternative asset. Let's say it's multifamily, oil and gas, you name it, right? And that compounds at 20% a year with tax benefits, which is basically our target that we're looking for in these opportunities. And you compare that versus leaving it in the 401k. Well, the S&P averages about 7.5%. So that 100,000, if you left it alone after taxes and fees, would be about $260,000. If you do it in the alternatives, you're at over $2 million after 20 years.
Oh, that's massive.
It's massive, right? So even if you say, hey, Dave, that those assumptions are too high, we'll cut it in half, right? And it still completely outpaces what the S&P is doing. And this is the big mistake that investors are making, is they think that, hey, the market is up this year, I'm doing fine. But it's those years like 2000, 2008 that take your overall compounded, actions or your results and then bring them back down, to where you have a loss. So it takes that much longer to get back to even where you were.
And that self-directed thing, just to touch on that briefly, that's still having the retirement vehicles, but you're doing it with a custodian that gives you more control. Would you say that that's an accurate summary?
Yeah, all this basically is so instead of having your 401k with Merrill Lynch, you give it to a different custodian who now allows you to invest in a multifamily opportunity, a self-storage or some kind of, you can invest in Bitcoin, you can invest in gold, all kinds of different alternative assets. Now you are still subject to the limitations of that 401k. You can't take it out till you're 59 and a half. You've got RMDs and everything, but you can at least get exposure with that capital to other investments. And let me give you another example of this asset repositioning with that. So if the market is bearing 7.5% return, we're running a merchant cash advance fund, which basically provides alternative lending to small businesses. That's doing a 20% return for the past 7 years. You can invest in this. You can reposition some of your 401k money that's earning 7.5% into this that's making 20%.
When you reposition like that, Dave, one of the big benefits of the oil and gas is the tax benefit, the tax strategy of it.
Yep.
How does using a tax advantageous vehicle like the 401k or a Roth or something like that, how is that affected when you go into a fund of like the oil and gas world? Do you still get the active to passive or?
Well, good question. So again, if you invest inside a self-directed IRA into an alternative asset, you are still subjected to the tax limitations of that 401k. And therefore, sometimes you will lose the tax benefits, right, of investing in that asset. So like oil and gas, it's preferable, right? Because you're trying to reduce your active income that you're using, cash to be able to invest in that, right? Yeah. So that's something, to be cognizant of. But again, in that other example, like I said, where there's no direct tax benefits, you can just improve your yield significantly, right? Moving from 7.5 to 20% return and, compound your money just that much faster.
So we talked about this just a little bit before too, the idea of achieving freedom, and that freedom is in money, purpose, time, and relationships. How do you help your clients create a comprehensive vision for this freedom?
Well, in this case, we actually run a virtual family office because, typical financial planning and wealth management, all evolves around stocks, bonds, mutual funds. That's their entire perspective. So we spend a lot of time with centimillionaires, family office communities, understanding their structures, how they're providing value to clients. And, our belief is that you don't need $100 million to be able to operate this way. So we have basically a network of advisors who all think the way we do and speak the same language. And then we help create that wealth vision and quarterback your wealth to really get to results, that much faster. So we have our own kind of, wealth manager who's really that quarterback to be able to do that. So we help clients do that from that standpoint. Other people may just do an investment with us and then we help them through education. I run a podcast as well called Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy. So we're constantly helping, with education. And really, Brett, kind of like, to your mission, the education is just so foundational, and we're really just trying to change the way people really think about wealth.
Yeah, access to the knowledge and surrounding yourself with the right people, just like you're talking, the office that you have, the family office that you have that, you share that vision of these 5 phases, which is really important. So now wherever their entry point is or wherever the client is at, they're able to have these tangible real world results. If you could think of one, and when I talk about real world results, again, it's a moment where I can actually feel the goosebumps because I've felt this personally in my own life. Can you share an example of someone who's achieved this transformation using your strategy?
Great question. And yes, we have many clients who have. And so one of our virtual family office clients, a friend of mine, Doug, it's amazing. He came to us probably 5 years ago and had all of his assets. Traditionally, he had 2 or 3 different homes. Half of them, equity was kind of paid off, right? Good LTV in there, but it was that trapped equity. He had 401ks, he had brokerage accounts. And so basically your traditional type of investments. We've repositioned his entire portfolio to now. He avoided the dip in the market 2022 when there was a loss there. He avoided that entire market. He's made several 7 figures in gains through his investments over the past 5 years. We've actually completely revamped his tax strategy. He hasn't paid taxes in 3 years. Either as part of that plan. He now has, and this is something, that will really hit home, for folks in the medical profession out there. So since we believe in holistic wealth, we actually, are tied to a functional medicine doctor as part of our virtual family office, which we've connected with him. And he recently found out he had a life-threatening issue that was identified proactively. And so now we mitigated that. Doug just feels really grateful that he has clarity and confidence with his, vision, his overall wealth vision. He feels a relief with his family that they are protected and all that he's worked for is going to create legacy wealth. And just, having that confidence that he's really, built this overall, real system around his wealth.
And helping Doug with all 5 phases is remarkable. And when you say Doug hasn't paid taxes in 3 years, it's because he has no tax liability, not because he's said, I'm not paying taxes. It's because
Correct.
his AGI is to the point where the numbers say that he doesn't owe taxes.
Correct.
So very important out there for Doug, and congratulations to Doug and to you, Dave. Hey, this has been fantastic. For the listeners who want to dive deeper into the holistic wealth strategy or connect with you and Pantheon Investments, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place, Brett, is, if you found some of these concepts interesting, I wanted to offer your listeners a special gift. And if you go to holisticwealthstrategy.com, you can get a free copy of the book, and happy to, connect with anyone from there.
Awesome. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. And your podcast, what was the name of your podcast again?
It is called Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy.
Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy, legacy wealth, building it in the 5 phases in a holistic perspective to gain that freedom. And it's more than just freedom of money. It's freedom of time and health and all of these things. Wow. It's been an absolute wonderful conversation. Dave, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Barrett. Appreciate you.
Yeah, special thanks to Dave Wolcott here today, walking us through this holistic wealth strategy. And I can attest to each one of these phases and implementing them in my life. It makes a difference. So I wanted to break these down for you here right before we leave. There's 5 phases: mindset, education, infrastructure, optimize assets, and then build massive passive income. I know these things work. I know there's a lot of action items for you to take away here, and some golden nuggets as well from this conversation. So thanks again to Dave. Thank you for listening today. And as always, thank you for your attention. And what I'd encourage you today to do is go back through and take a shot at one of these. You can enter at any one of these phases. Take a shot at one of these phases. And I know that you will begin to learn more and do more through that process. This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.